Head down and swim. Come on, Terry. Come on. Come on, Terry. Come on. We don't want bronze, son. We swim for gold.
You can beat him, Lee. Try a bit harder. Deep breaths. I'll give you $2 if you beat him. Never mind, Lee. Don't be upset. It's only a sport.
That wasn't good enough. Now, I had you leading by 20 points at half-time, and now you're 2 points down. You didn't go in hard enough. You forgot what I told you. Now, I don't have to tell you how important the next 20 minutes are. This is the last quarter of football this season. This is the grand final. You're only going to be 12 once in your lives. It's all up to you. Get on your ground, boy! Greg, come on, son! Give it!
Well, funny as that may seem, and tragic though the earlier scenes were, they are in fact true, and we've reenacted them to show how parental involvement in children's competitive sport can put undue pressure on the kids themselves. This has become a real issue, and one worthy of the attention of all parents. It was here in Canberra some 3 years ago that warnings on the dangers of children's competitive sport hit the headlines. It was Australia's sporting process of catch 'em young under fire. Dr. Henry Pang, a Canberra GP, was speaking out against a firmly entrenched tradition. His theories were based on observation of his own son, who wasn't coping with his rugby in the under-7s.
My little boy felt that he wasn't any good, and I studied the problem, and I came up with the feeling that there was a fault due to the intense competitiveness of people involved in the sport.
Since then, it's become a really big issue. I noticed in a lot of your writings you quoted Donald Horne in The Lucky Country with a quote, sport to many Australians is life, the rest a shadow. Sport has been the one institution that has had no knockers, but you have become a knocker, haven't you?
I think it's important as we move into the so-called future shock society that people who become aware of faults should speak up and become knockers and attack institutions if they see it's the best thing to do.
Are you saying that sport is fundamentally bad?
No, I think sport in itself as a physical recreation is good. I think it's the way Australian people are using it that's bad. I think this intense win-at-all-cost attitude is bad because that puts extreme pressures on children which can lead to difficulties later in their life.
Sport for fun, emphasising skills and fitness. Henry Pang's plan at work at Torrens Primary School in Canberra. Students from the nearby Melrose High School taking the primary school kids for play periods.
Bend your leg, bend them. Okay, next one on up straight after the other. That's right. How is that? You got it, That's right. This girl's good.
In Adelaide, at the Salisbury College of Advanced Education, aspects of children at sport are being examined in a 30-minute film being made with the assistance of a grant from the National Fitness Council. The film shows children at play and during organised sport, in this case Australian football, and some disturbing incidents with coaches and parents. It's being made by Ian Robertson, a lecturer in physical education at the college. Why did he become involved in the project?
I read an article by Henry Pang about lack of involvement of children in junior sport in New South Wales and Melbourne, mainly about rugby players. I took our students to the local oval here, look at the involvement of children playing Australian rules football. And when I was there, I noticed the fact that, you know, beyond lack of involvement of some children, there's quite a bit of actual stress being imposed on the children by adults who actually organise the game for the children. The adults were imposing their values on children, their extrinsic values. You know, children should play for trophies, for money, for going top. But the kids were there, I think, just to play for the enjoyment aspects, the fun aspects. Yet they had this clash of values, and the children, I think, were paying a reasonably high price for it. Most parents that I have noticed at football have been quite sincere in their approach and quite genuine and what will behave. If the few parents and coaches do misbehave and, you know, really stress the children, you know, it can affect quite a few children. The coach who actually misbehaves can affect 25 children, you know, 20 players and 4 or 5 reserves who are there.
An actual coach's speech to a team of 10-year-olds.
He's going to lift by at least 2 or 3 kicks this quarter. If everyone lifts 5%, which is 1 kick, 1 lousy stinking kick, we'll lift and we'll win. As I told you before, we like to see you kids play. We don't want nothing from you. This is, you know, this is serious. We don't expect nothing. We're terrific, happy. You're in the grand final. But you've got to all lift, and you've got to all lift together, and you've got to all run. We're going to get out there and we're going to run, aren't we? Yes! We're going to run till our bloody legs drop off. And when they drop off, we run on our elbows. And when we run on our elbows, then we run on our bloody guts. And we're going to win this game, aren't we? Yeah! Let's get into it. Come on.
We've seen cases where coaches have really stressed players by having very high expectations to win the game. Yet when the children lose, they, you know, break out crying and, you know, show the signs of that stress. I think they find it very hard to reconcile how they behave. They saw themselves behaving on film. They find it hard to explain what they're doing. When they've seen us there with our cameras and tape recorders, they've stopped and checked themselves and thought, you know, what am I doing? What is he, you know, filming us for? And they actually have toned down their behaviour. And I think just as awareness that they have, you know, brought upon them by our presence has brought about some change in quite a few cases.
So what do you hope to achieve with the film, to realise this awareness?
Well, we hope to show the film in the Salisbury area and use it to show, have the parents perhaps, you know, re-evaluate what they're doing and have them see children who play football are not league players but are children.
North Melbourne winning their first VFL premiership this year. A premiership is sweet for North's emotional coach, Ron Barassi. But is it so important for the kids?
Some junior coaches watch the antics of us league coaches, and we go a bit crazy, let's face it. But the times we do would be, as a percentage of our whole performance as a coach for the whole week would be, you know, 1 and 2%. But naturally, sometimes it's on television and it's highlighted. They get the wrong impression. That's not what we're on about. So if they're copying us, they're completely wrong. The coach today, you know, rants and raves only. You get nowhere today with today's young men. The only thing wrong with competitive sport for kids is adults. It's our values on the game and the competitiveness of it that ruin some kids. But that's no excuse to give away competitive sport. I mean, we've got to re-educate perhaps adults, give them a better insight as to what they should be doing. I think we should replace the win at all costs in competitive sport for kids with a thing that's actually, in my belief, harder to achieve, and that is to get the very best out of yourself. Now, if we made that as the ideal, there's no shame in losing, and if you've done your best.
At the University of Western Australia, a lot of research has been done in children's sport. Geoff Watson, lecturer in sociology, has studied overseas and written a number of papers on the role of parents.
We've seen some pretty vivid accounts of what you would call semi-child abuse, but in most cases not motivated explicitly by parents attempting to deprive their children of anything that they would ideally want for them, but just not being aware of the fact that a child is a child, and what they're attempting to do is to place their own parental values and expectations on their children's performance, and to a large extent using their children. So when their children are actually competing, they in effect see themselves out there. They see their past career as a child represented in their child's career. And in their own terms, they're attempting to have their child attain the highest level of success for the child, but in reasonably destructive ways.
That gives you enough time to get a bit of a rest.
Swimming suffers probably the most criticism, that young kids are driven by sadistic coaches and glory-seeking parents to strive for Olympic medals.
A lot of it should be done on the one breath. A lot of it.
Forbes Carlile, who has coached Shane Gould and Jenny Turrell, among others, to world records and international fame, strongly denies it is harmful.
I think it does them a great deal of good that the children who train hard, who make sacrifices for it, who get up early in the morning, in the long run, it does them nothing but good. This seems to be the consensus of opinion of those that have really studied the sport.
What experience have you had with the parents of the children?
Quite good as a rule. Not always, though, because parents get wrapped up in their children, and it would be just as naturally as human nature, just the same as if it, in any other aspect of life. I'm sure that the parents of children on the stage and so on are just as difficult. They can be difficult. With the parent really wanting so much that child to succeed, to be number one, and there's going to be one number one, then sometimes you get trouble. But if the parents look upon swimming and a broad view of swimming as being good for them, it doesn't really matter about medals and glory. The important thing is the application to it, the exercise, the discipline and the lessons that you learn by winning and by losing. If they look at it that way, well then these parents can be much easier to handle. And it's up to we coaches, I think, to educate them.
It must be difficult for the child, I suppose, because a coach would have a very important role in the child's life. Between parent, school teacher and coach, there are all sorts of influences there.
Yes, I think children do tend to be pulled various ways. Everybody sees what they're doing as the most important thing, particularly a school teacher who talks about waterlogged robos and well, you know, we've read about brain damage and so really quite ridiculous things said about the effects of hard training. All things which I must say have been proved to be completely wrong. I mean, there have been experts who have looked into this field, physiologists, sociologists in Europe and in America, have examined the situation carefully, and their conclusion is that physiologically and psychologically and sociologically, swimming practice and, I suppose, sport in general is sound.
Dr. Ken Fitch, a leading authority on sports medicine, is Australian team doctor for next year's Montreal Olympics. Does he think competitive sport is damaging for children?
No, Drew, I don't think there's a lot of evidence that much physical harm befalls children who participate in a lot of competitive sport in this age group. I think it's an age group of activity, and children want to be active, and there's a natural desire to tend to want to compete and beat somebody. But I think there are some quite big psychological problems which come from an overemphasis on competition, that it's too highly organised, perhaps not always for the children, but perhaps sometimes for the organisers and for the parents.
So there are adult standards being imposed on these kids?
Yes, undoubtedly. One of the unfortunate features is that where the coach and perhaps pushed by the parent tries to bring some of the same attributes that are brought in the top grades of competitive and contact sport. So the gun player, the star footballer or whatever code it be, is often a target for unnecessary violence because he's the difference between victory and defeat.
You've seen cases where where a player has been a marked player. He might be 10 years old or something, but he's kicking a lot of goals.
Unfortunately, yes, Drew. I would make the point, perhaps, that two little boys running towards the ball with their eyes on it and colliding, using the old physics formula of half mass times velocity squared, don't do themselves a lot of harm. They're not running at great pace, and they're only little fellows. So they pick themselves up and they go after the ball. That's good, but it's the sly, the boot and the fist and the unnecessary rough play that does tend to bring a bad name to some of the competitive sports with too much accent and emphasis on winning.
Now, you know, we're playing forward hacking, that's right. Now, you know, they've got a couple of good players forward hacking. Who's their best player?
Conforming to what is expected of you or what you think is expected of you is a pretty powerful influence. And from a lot of research in Europe, in the interpretation of rules of soccer, it seems that it's taken for granted that to break the rules for the sake of the team is quite accepted. And the British, Finnish and Swedish sports authorities are alarmed at these types of results. And they're faced with the question of how they can modify the organisation of children's sport, being such a worldwide phenomenon, to allow the game itself to be the important thing. In other words, to bring children back in and to take adults out.
Some football administrators favour modified rules for juniors so skills can develop without the pressure of the senior game. Victoria is following South Australia's lead and recently held a demonstration match for coaches.
Really marked it. Still no ball up required because the player got away with the ball.
In some cases, competitions have been banned for under-10s. Elsewhere, there are no competition points and fairest and best trophies in Saturday morning football, where most ugly incidents with parents occur. Ray Allsop, Director of the Junior Football Council of Victoria.
Most coaches who come back and take junior sport have been through a system in senior sport which says that you've got to win at all costs, and I think that's acceptable in senior sport. Now they come back into junior sport, and I don't think that is as important in junior sport. The more important thing is to prepare them to play that type of game when they're seniors. A parent looks at his kid on the ground, and if his child is not performing well, he sees that as a reflection upon the way that he's brought his child up. And he does tend to get a little bit angry. I think that applies to some parents, so I would hope not many. Also, some parents tend to get a little bit jealous of the coach even, because here's the coach taking his boy. And the boy may be reacting to the coach, whereas the parent can't get the boy to react to him. And some parents get annoyed with the umpire because they've had the effrontery to pay a free kick against their boy in a certain position.
Teach your children well, their father's help did slowly go by, and feed them on your dream, the one they fix, the one you know by. Don't you ever ask them why, if they told you you would cry, so just look at them and sigh.
When you addressed the World Congress on Sports Medicine in Melbourne last year, you made the statement that all competitive sport involving pre-adolescent children, male or female, is biologically unsound. It's a fairly sweeping statement, isn't it?
Yes, I can be quite dogmatic on that point. This is because, as every parent knows, the growth of children is a very individual matter, and data is available to show that the range of development is such that within any one chronological age group, there can be a variation of up to 4 years in developmental age. And this means that before maturity, we can never achieve a steady state. There will always be this great range of development on the football field, and it means inevitably that there will be no hopers and stars, and this leads to difficulties. But in general, I would prefer to see a shift in orientation from team, intense competitive activities to more individual sort of activities such as archery, orienteering, swimming, gymnastics and so on, where the emphasis is on the individual competing with himself. I think this sort of thing is more suitable, only because children grow at such individual rates. We can never set up a situation where we can accurately match children in the group and team situation.
Perhaps up to the age of 11 or 12, the discrepancy in size and in maturation is not so great. But after that, when puberty sets in at a very wide-ranging time from perhaps 9 to up to 16 or 17 in girls and boys, you get gross examples of inequality in sporting competitiveness, where only recently I saw a boy aged 16 with a bone age of 11 and a half. Now he's competing against boys in all sorts of sports who perhaps have been shaving for 3.5 years, and he's got no chance physically to be competing, but because he's 16, and he was 16 on the day I x-rayed him, he must compete, and he is just got no chance. He'll have to go into something which is perhaps less physical.
I think perhaps up until 10 or 11 we shouldn't play football. We should just have practice our skills and have the competitiveness in the skills, like who's the best kick, who's the most accurate hand pass, etc., etc., etc. And again get them to have pride in doing their best.
Under the current system with junior sport, competitions all the way up from, well, 6 years old or something, are you disappointed in the amount of skill that players have when they reach senior football?
Yes, definitely. It's not coming through, and it just is win at all costs. Or the fact that we don't concentrate on skills enough for long enough when they're kids. As I said, I'd like to see them have no games until about 11, then have a year of this what they call modified rules football, where there's no physical contact, then straight into it.
Czechoslovakia have done a lot of work, particularly in this area of acquisition of skill in the age group of 11 to 13, where they have demonstrated that this is the time to acquire these skills and then to specialise a little later. But let the children in this age group dabble in anything and find what they're best suited to, physically, psychologically, and as far as their genetics are concerned, because this is a very real thing and what makes a champion.
There is a so-called dropout and burnout phenomenon in which children at both ends of the spectrum, actually, the kids who are so-called no hopeless drop out because they think they're no good, and the kids who were good find that the others catch up because they are late maturers, and then they drop out, so that we have a downward curve in which children just don't participate anymore.
You can only peak so often, you can only produce your maximum performance so often, and I think very often the boy who has trained for premiership or for victories for 10 years often has had enough by the time he's 15, and he walks off at the age of, finished his under 16 code of sport, and he goes off with his surfboard or his trail bike, and he's had enough of this sort of thing.
A lot have been turned off sport, I think, through this, it's a reaction they have. They can't explain why, but it's a bit of a gut feeling, but they know it's there. They know they've had problems in relating or getting involved in the game, and they have dropped out.
They get disappointed if they, particularly if they have done well, and then don't do quite so well. That's a pretty good reason for a lot to seek greener pastures, so to speak.
Not many, my dear.
Give up. No. This is called boffing, and it's a concept which is gaining a lot of momentum in Australia today, where it encourages sport with no winners and no losers. In fact, governments are backing the scheme so much that the Victorian Department of Youth, Sport and Recreation has sponsored a visit to Australia by Pat Farrington, who's the president of the New Games Foundation in America.
It's the kind of a sport where everybody can join in, where families can play together, old people, young people, regardless of their physical abilities, can still play in this.
And is it specifically designed for the people who were losers in their school sports and so on?
I think so. Most of us are really spectators. We're nations of spectators. This is the kind of thing that can get people in. They got discouraged at the beginning you know, because they couldn't play as well as more athletic people. So now we're offering people a way to get in, really experience their bodies.
I suppose America is a step ahead of Australia in this regard, that they laud their champion sportsmen, and there is the giant Little League organisation and so on. So was the setting up of the New Games Foundation in America to combat the extreme competitive element?
It really was. In Little League, little youngsters, 6 and 7 years old, would be encouraged to win by their parents, and if they'd lose, they'd be thrashed soundly on the field. I witnessed that myself. And I think what we want to do is see everybody really develop a good sense of themselves through physical activity. And the competitive sports thing has really gotten out of hand in the States. I think competition's incredible, and I really believe in it. But we have to have something for everybody.
You're taking this to the eyes of the world next year at the Montreal Olympics, aren't you?
That's exciting. We'll have all the Olympics there, people from the Olympics there, and they'll have a chance to come together and play with the people in the Montreal community. And all the games we play don't need the same language, so they can cross all those barriers of language, you know, race.
Now Henry Peng is no longer a lone figure in the wilderness, as he was when he first criticised an Australian tradition.
There was a lot of opposition and hostility, but over the years, I've been pleased to receive invitations from a wide cross-section of the community who have expressed interest in what's going on, and I'm sure that at this point of time there is an increase in awareness and there is a greater acceptance that there is something amiss in our system of intense competitive sport, and people are interested in alternatives.
I think that the advice I would give would be for parents to be very discreet here, and perhaps the less said by them directly to their children the better, but to train themselves as parents to become experts in observing their own child's development.
I think the direction we should take is to depressurize competition and to, importantly, to generate an alternative, a viable alternative for people to see so that they can offer this for their children instead of intense competitive sport.
I often say, you know, when I go out to dinner, I don't order for anyone else. I let them order for themselves. Now, I think we should let our children perhaps decide what they want to do. And often this isn't done. There's perhaps too much pressure from the parent and not enough selection by the child.
Teach your parents well. Their children's hell will slowly go by, and feed them on your dream, the one they fix, the one you know by. Don't you ever ask them why. If they told you, you would cry. So just look at them and sigh.